I've had a lot of people ask me for tips on animation or how to get started, so I thought why not give my 2 cents. This video will be about 2D digital animation specifically, but a lot of it will apply to other mediums. The first thing you need is animation software. Just kidding, you don't even need that. You can animate with a pencil and paper. Or just paper if you want to do stop motion. But we're focusing on 2D computer animation, so here are some programs you can use. Everything in green is free. And yes, Blender does have 2D capabilities. I haven't used them, but they exist. The only app here I have any real experience with is Animate. So I can't give a fully informed recommendation, but all of these are definitely good, usable programs, especially if you're a beginner. You should do some research and see what works best for you. Just know that software doesn't matter a whole lot at the start. My timeline for animation mediums went something like flipbooks, creating individual images as frames in Microsoft Paint and going through them with the arrow key in File Explorer to view the animation, pivot, then Flash. It was Macromedia Flash when I started, then Adobe Flash, then got rebranded to Adobe Animate, which is still what I use. Before you get into animating anything, you'll need to at least know the basics of the program you're using. There'll be good tutorials out there for every popular animation app, but I'll go over some of the most important stuff here. I'm using Adobe Animate, so if you're using something else, the tools and names and locations might be different, but the fundamental ideas should be the same across most apps. Alright, I have Adobe Animate open, and we're going to take a look at the toolbar on the left. So, the most used thing is probably this brush tool, classic brush. You can press B to select it. It's handy to learn all the shortcuts. That's just going to be what you draw with. And you'll notice I can kind of taper the thickness. That's because I'm using a drawing tablet. If you just have a mouse, you won't be able to, it'll just be one solid thickness. But that's okay. Now I'm going to delete all that. You probably won't ever use this, but if you click these 3 dots, there's a pencil tool. I'm just going to drag it out here. So you can also draw with this. The difference is that it makes lines, and the difference between a line stroke and a brush stroke is that you can take this and sort of warp it around. With this you can kind of do that, but it does it to like one side. And the brush, which is what you will usually be using, can also be filled with the paint bucket. So let's change the color here to blue, and there we go. We'll get more into colors soon, but let's look at the shape tool. So we have this rectangle, and the color that it'll be, let's just draw it. You can't see that very well, but there's an orange outline. That's because the secondary color is orange, and the main color is blue. So I'll just increase the stroke size to 10. Now we can see it's much thicker. But if you right click on this rectangle, you can get more shapes. Rectangle and oval are mostly what you'd want to use. You can also hold shift to make it stay perfectly symmetrical, perfectly circular. We can just do some of that. Now, very importantly, these 2 arrows at the top are the select tools. There's not much of a difference between them. You can kind of use either one to just grab and select things, but the second one with the box allows you to transform, like that. You can squash it, or you can hold shift and scale it like evenly. You can also hover around a corner and rotate things. The other select tool is just more basic. You just select something and you can do that. I don't know what the benefit of the basic select tool is, but I tend to just use that when I'm doing something like adjusting a little squiggle. So let's Control A, delete everything, go to the brush tool, which is B, where you can just click it. Let's draw a stick man. Brilliant. So down the bottom here is our timeline, and this is where all the animation happens. But before any of that, let's make a new layer by clicking this plus. Now we have 2 layers. Because let's say you want to have a character and then a background. We'll drag layer 2 below so that it's at the bottom. And let's just make a big rectangle. It covers the whole space. Select it with one of these arrows, then we can make like a light blue. If we switch the layers, then the stickman would be behind all of that, so make sure that's on bottom. And if you hover over here, you can click this padlock to lock the layer, so you don't accidentally like mess with it while you're trying to edit the stickman layer, like doing a little face. Okay, so what if you wanted to color in this head? Well, you can go to the paint bucket tool, and the shortcut for that is K. very useful to know all these shortcuts. Grab like a white and just fill it in by clicking. But let's say you wanted to change the face. It'd be kind of annoying to do it now. We could select all of these parts and delete them, but then it leaves a hole where the face was. You could also fill them in with white, but obviously it would be annoying to do that every time. So let's get rid of that white. We could put the face on another layer, but another thing you can do is select something and turn it into a group. So let's select all these pieces and then press Ctrl G for group. So now this is like one object that we can put anywhere we want. Now if we fill in the head, the face is still above all this white stuff. We can do whatever we please. Even double click into the group, maybe erase these eyes. E for erase, by the way, but you can see it in the toolbar over here. Eyebrows. Right, so going back to the background layer, and we can actually rename these layers by double clicking them. Call that BG to make it less confusing. Unlock it by clicking the padlock. And if you look all the way to the right over here, we have the color panel. We have this very interesting color cube and grab very specific colors. Now the thing is, depending on which one of these circles over here you have selected, it'll make this look completely different. The one I find most intuitive and useful is if you have the H for hue selected, and you can just slide along here to change the color, and then kind of grab around here to change the sort of saturation and darkness. So if this is a sky in the background, maybe something like this would be, maybe that's a little depressing, we can go a little bit brighter, yeah. And let's draw a little bit of grass. Let's go down here, grab some green and kind of make it a little bit darker. Of course, if we were to draw a little hill straight on here with the brush, and then fill it in, that's cool, but now we've kind of overwritten the sky, so we can't like move this around without having parts of the sky cut out. I'm gonna make a group. So you can actually have nothing selected, then press Ctrl G, and now you're like inside a group. So we can make the grass inside here. K for paint bucket, fill it in. Now of course it's a group. We can move it around. I didn't mention this, but double click to enter the group. Now we can, adjust the grass, draw on top of it. And up at the top here is where you can go back to like the main stage or scene 1. So another thing you can do with color is gradients. If we go back to the colors over here, you can select this solid color drop down and change it to, well, for now we'll do linear gradient. So that has 2 colors and sort of automatically blends the space between them. We can select this black by clicking it and then either change it up here to whatever we want, or if you double click it, you have the eyedropper tool, which means you can sort of hover anywhere and select that color. I like the color we already had, so I'll click that, and then it kind of fades into just white. So that's a nice sky gradient. Now what we can do is just click the sky area, and it'll fill it in. But it does that horizontally, and that's not what I want. I want it to go vertically. So white's at the bottom and the blue's at the top. So what I do is I click and drag, and you can see it kind of stretches it out as I go. But then you have to kind of judge how far you want to do it, and it's kind of tricky. But what you can do is just let go at any point, like here, and then click, and it keeps the direction it had. So that was almost straight down. But if you want to go directly straight down, you can hold Shift, click and drag, and it'll be perfectly vertical. Or perfectly, you can rotate it around. Drag it any amount, let go, click, and there we go. So I would advise just messing around, trying to draw stuff, make whatever you want. It's a good way to get used to the program and all the tools available. And that applies to any program really. If there's a certain thing you want to accomplish but you don't know how, you can just look it up. Alright, let's get into animation. Probably the whole reason you're here. You want to set up the stage the way you want. So click Properties in this panel over here, and you need to have one of these selection tools selected. If you have like the brush selected, it'll show the properties for the brush. I'll just select a selection tool. Now down in document settings, we have the width and height, W and H. So 1920 by 1080 is usually what I'm working with. It's like a standard YouTube video size. FPS is the frames per second. I like to do 24. It's nicely divisible. It's kind of a standard animation frame rate. So that means every 24 drawings will be 1 second of animation. But you don't have to do 24 drawings per second. You can hold a drawing for 2 frames or more. Depends on the speed of things and what's even happening. The stage, we will leave it white. Okay, now back to the brush. You have the size down here, you have the color of course. With a mouse it'll be different. So this is a mouse line. This is me doing it with a tablet. If I pressed really hard it would get the same thickness, but anyway, I guess it's like really up to you what kind of thickness you want. But just to wrap your head around how this whole thing works, we're gonna make this really big, like 55. Sure, maybe like 90. So we're gonna animate a dot, just a simple dot. So, I'm just gonna draw one over here. That's frame 1. Down here on the timeline, you can either right-click next to this and insert a keyframe. Well, a blank keyframe. Inserting a normal keyframe means it keeps whatever the drawing was on the next frame. That's not what we want. So we'll delete that or do a blank keyframe. Now, inserting a normal frame, insert frame, so not keyframe, just frame. Doing that means you've extended the first frame, as in, we're on the second frame now, but any adjustments we make to this frame are applying to the first frame as well, because it's kind of just one long frame. If it was a keyframe, see how they're split up, make an adjustment on frame 2, and frame 1 is unaffected. You can see the shortcuts here, some of the most important shortcuts, because it's very cumbersome having to be like, insert frame over and over. F7 for blank keyframe. Now, very handy, the onion skin. Click these little circles down here. If you don't see them, if you're in Adobe Animate, you might have to go Windows, Workspaces, and Essentials. So click the onion skin, and we can see like a ghost of what was on the previous frame. So we can kind of see where it was and draw the next image. So I'm just gonna draw the dot slightly moved over. Now we'll create another keyframe, and, well, another blank keyframe. And we have the onion skin of both of the previous frames. So if we turn it off, they're not there. If you wanted to not show the first one and just the second, you can come down here and just drag the tail into this to only cover the previous frame. But I think in this case, we actually do want to see the last 2 frames. Now we're going to draw the dot again, but maybe a little bit further out and starting to stretch out a little bit. Now let's just turn the onion skin off. If we drag this, this blue thing on the timeline, you can kind of scroll between the different frames, and I mean already, that kind of is an animation. If we go back to the start and press enter, boop, very quick, but... And you can even click this arrow thing to loop it. So we click that and make sure these blue arrow areas cover every single frame. Press enter, and it's rapidly playing over and over again. Onion skin back on, press F7 to make a new blank keyframe. I'm gonna stretch this out even more and space it even further away. Move it down a little bit. By the way, you can select stuff and press the arrow keys to move them very precisely, and you can also hold shift to move them bigger increments at a time, and that's just very handy. Another blank keyframe, and we're going to start to slow it down, so less stretched. We're almost at the edge of the screen. F7, starting to ball up. I'm actually going to go back to this frame and move it back a little bit so we have more space. Now we're just going to draw a dot, and it's basically stopped in place. Press F7 again. I'm just going to move it very slightly. So let's drag this playhead back to the start. Oh, press enter. There we go. Got a pretty smooth dot zoom across the screen. Press the loop, drag the blue all the way to the end. There we go. It's not really a looping animation because it kind of stops and teleports back to the start, but we can make it loop. We can do that in a very easy way actually by selecting all of these frames. Just click and drag, copy them, click the next frame over, so frame 9, right click that and click paste. Now what we can do is reverse all of these frames from 9 onwards by selecting all of these, right click and reverse frames. There we go. So now it goes like this, but then it brings itself all the way back. So click the loop button, drag this, Now let's watch. Wow, it's pretty fun. You can also press Ctrl Enter to view it in full size in its own window. Now let's click over here next to properties into the scene panel. If that doesn't exist for you, click Windows, then just select scene. Now all the way down the bottom, there's a little plus, and that's just adding a scene. So now we've got a completely blank slate, but what we made still exists if we just click back to scene 1. So in scene 2, I'm going to show you some tweens. It's a way to automate the in-between frames of an animation. So I'm just going to draw a little scribble. Now if we select that, you can either click it or drag over it. Press F8 to create a symbol. It's kind of like a group, but it'll be in your library, and that means you can sort of duplicate it at any time, and any changes you make to one will be changed across all of the copies. And you can do stuff like tweens and filters with it. So I'm just going to call it Scrib. Now, as opposed to just creating a new frame immediately, I'm going to click all the way over here on, let's say, frame 50, and press F6 for new keyframe. So our thing is still there, and I'm just going to move it, just like move it over here. That's cool. So that's not much of an animation. Now, but if we right click in any of these frames before frame 50, create classic tween, well now, wow, it moves in a perfect mathematical motion across the screen. Now, that is pretty lifeless, and you gotta use tweens wisely. I don't know what this object is, but in some cases maybe this is the kind of motion you would want. But one thing we can do to add some life to it is click on this tween somewhere, any of these purple frames, and in our properties panel, you can see this effect and it's on classic ease, which means there's really no easing at all. It's just the same speed the whole time. If you click this 0, you can make it anywhere from -100 to +100. So let's say -100. What that means is it'll start off really slow and then speed up towards the end. So maybe this is a bit long, I'll make it like 30 frames. So I can just select all of this, right click, remove frames. Now it's only 30 frames long. And if we make it +100, it'll start off fast and then slow down. So that would be easing out. But you can ease it in and out in one tween by clicking this box, clicking ease in and out. So there's different like intensities. Quad, cubic, quart. So quad just means it'll be more subtle. If we went all the way to quint, it would like start off really slow, then rapidly speed up, and then rapidly slow down. So let's click that. So, you know, it just depends on the kind of motion you want. Go back to like cubic. That's a, you know, a pretty nice movement. Another thing you can do is change the rotation and even the size. So I'm just gonna take the corner of this on the last frame and spin it just, you know, some amount back. And you'll see that it rotates at the same time. It's pretty fun. You can even change the size. Just hold Shift and grab this corner. But another useful thing for size, you press Ctrl-Alt-S for scale. You just have to learn all these shortcuts over time. You can change the rotation here as well, but we'll just change the scale. So if we make it like 150%, it'll become 1.5 times bigger. And it's almost off the screen, but it's kind of like coming towards the camera. It can be a little spaceship. So that's the gist of classic tweens, but I'm gonna show you a shape tween. All right, let's just make a new layer. Put this down the bottom. I'm gonna lock and even hide with this eyeball. I'm gonna hide the top layer. Let's draw, say, a triangle. I'm gonna click all the way over here on frame 30, F7, and let's just draw some other random thing like a spiral, sure. Now, I'm gonna go somewhere along here, right click and press create shape tween. Oh, that's kind of crazy. The thing with shape tweens is you'll almost never use them. And for the purposes of morphing a shape into another, it almost never works. We'll see if it works here. No. See, that is not exactly the way you would envision a triangle morphing into a spiral. The computer's just kind of calculating average points or something. Yeah, it's not very good. I'm gonna delete this spiral and go back and delete this triangle as well. We can just, and the shape tween's still there, there's just nothing to base it on. One thing shape tweens are useful for is changing the color of something. So let's just actually click this secondary color and click this slash thing to make it blank. So there's no outline on this square. I'm just gonna make a square. It's kind of red. We can click this, Control C, go to frame 30, Control Shift V to paste it in exactly the same place. Now let's click this square, this rectangle, and make it, you know, whatever color you want. It'll be kind of yellowy. All right. Now, if we go back to the start and press play, it fades the colors perfectly. So yeah, that's something I'd use if I was fading to black, or maybe the sky's like sun setting with a gradient. And of course we can do any sort of easing we want. Ease in and out, caught. Now I'm just gonna make another layer, lock this one, and let's just turn this to black. Shape tweens can actually work shape-wise if they're not shaped too differently. If I did a circle, make a new blank frame over here, maybe a kind of beanie thing. I don't know if this will actually work, but create shape tween, and it did actually work. It's a little robotic in how perfect it is, so I wouldn't normally do that, but let's change the easing as well. Ease in and out, cubic. See, that could come in handy. Yeah, it just depends what you want to do. Now let's talk about frame by frame animation, which is what we did earlier in scene 1 with this dot. So it's when each frame is a new drawing as opposed to the tweening stuff. I'm just gonna turn this brush down to like 22. So frame by frame animation can be done kind of in two ways. Either straight ahead, which is where you draw a frame, go ahead and do another one, or you draw something, go ahead a few frames, draw something else, like that. Then you go in the middle, click the onion skin, and now you kind of draw whatever's in between those things. This is usually the better or easier thing to do. Depends on the circumstances, but to demonstrate, we're gonna animate a little morph. So delete everything. In frame 1, I'm going to draw a pear. Perfect. Now I'm just gonna go to like frame 20, make a blank keyframe, and draw, do a spoon. That'll do. We have two shapes to morph between. So doing that straight ahead would be, well, quite challenging. Now that we have two reference points, I'm just gonna click frame 19, press F7, turn on the onion skin, and I'm just gonna try and make a shape halfway between these. It's kind of up to your interpretation. So the pear is kind of big and bulbous on the bottom, and we'll turn that kind of halfway to the handle of the spoon. Right, so that's kind of halfway between the two. Now I can just click this frame, drag and move it. We'll add a new frame between, and we can actually drag the onion skin to just cover these two frames that we want. So now I'm gonna draw something halfway between these two, kind of like something like that. It's pretty good. And I'll make the stem like almost gone now. Go back, new blank keyframe here, do something halfway between these two. Doesn't have to be too amazing. And let's just delete all this nonsense. Remove. So already we have kind of a morph. And if you wanted to make it smoother, you would just go between all of these frames and add even more in-betweens. So we'll make space by pressing F5 and then F7. We'll do that for every single one and just fill in the empty space between. So let's just go from the start. It's quite a smooth morph. Now let's see what happens if we use a shape tween on that. So make a new layer. You can actually press Alt, then click and drag to copy the frame up there. So do that for the first and last. Hide this bottom layer. Now let's create a shape tween. See, that's very janky and kind of AI looking, as opposed to this. You know, you could add even more in-betweens, and maybe like just in specific parts, like the end. But really, that's the gist of how you do animation. Okay, so now you know how this thing works and some of the tools available. But how do you actually animate stuff and get better at it? A good place to start is the 12 basic principles of animation. We can actually cover most of these in a jump animation I did for the last video. Before leaping into the air, he needs to bend down and swing his arms back in anticipation. At the same time, we have a squash with the character becoming shorter and wider, then a stretch on the way up. There's also exaggeration here with how much he's squashing and stretching. Most action follows an arc. We can see that with the arm swing and of course the jump itself. We actually used slow in and slow out earlier with the dot. Objects need to accelerate and decelerate, so we draw more pictures at the start and end. We can again see that in the crouch and jump. Of course it needs to slow down at the top due to gravity, but any natural movement should have some easing. Straight ahead action and pose to pose. This is what we went over just before with the pear and spoon. Most of the time pose to pose is easier and more effective. In this case I drew the keyframes like standing, crouching, the peak and landing, then drew the in-betweens. Timing is just the speed at which things happen. It can affect the realism or mood of a scene. I was going for comedy here, so the slowdown and speed up in the jump is a bit exaggerated. Now let's take a look at this fantasy jump from the same video. With the main action being body and legs, the arms are a basic example of secondary action. Something that supports the main action and gives it more life. We can also see some follow through and overlapping action. Once he lands, everything stops except the arms, which are looser and need time to settle into place. That's follow through. Now overlapping action refers to things moving at different rates. It's quite subtle here, but during the jump, the arms and legs aren't exactly in sync. Staging, solid drawing, and appeal are more about the artwork. You can find resources for those and every principle of animation all over the internet. I wouldn't worry about trying to learn all of these immediately. You'll learn over time just by making stuff. Say you want to learn how to animate a tornado or some lightning. Look at references, find tutorials, and just give it a try. It might be bad at first, but it'll get better. When I want to animate something in particular, I'll see if I can do it myself. If it turns out I have no idea what I'm doing, which is usually the case, I'll look it up on YouTube. Real life footage, examples in other animations, tutorials, and then put your own spin on it. The more you practice, the more you'll learn, and you'll find a lot of techniques are applicable to many situations. At the end of the day, the best way forward is to just make stuff. And that's it. If you're just getting into animation, I hope you took something away from this. If you needed something to watch during lunch, then I'm glad to be of service. Thanks for watching, I hope to see you in another video.